This is not the life that I wanted, right? I took all the right steps and I ended up in the wrong place. I've wasted 6 years towards working towards a degree I hate, chemistry. I'm also terrified of dropping out. So hi, some background info. I used to be a straight A student in high school, but didn't have any interests to pursue in university. So I applied to chemistry because it was my highest grade. I have spent 6 long years in university for a program I have zero interest in and quite frankly despise being in. During these 6 years, I've taken many different subjects for my electives in hopes of finding something I'm passionate about: math, biology, kinesiology, psychology, philosophy. None of them really clicked for me. But now I'm considering a full switch into computer science, which would require me to switch schools since my GPA is low. Uh-oh. My problem is I'm incredibly ashamed of how much time I've sunk. Oh, look. It's almost like this is a test case chat. My problem is I'm incredibly ashamed of how much I've sunk into this degree that's made me extremely miserable. My peers are all graduated. There's the comparison. Some have jobs. Some are starting a family. Some about to complete their master's programs. Meanwhile, I feel anxious and depressed being where they were 6 years ago. It feels so difficult to leave it since it's really all I've had in the past 6 years. I don't know if I'm capable of going into a new degree and starting fresh at the age of 24, but I also know I'll hate my life if I stay. I'm also afraid of how my parents may react when I tell them I've wasted so much money in tuition, rent, etc. My parents worked extremely hard, and I feel extremely grateful that they helped me pay for my college funds. I feel this pressure to succeed and provide for them like they did for me, but at the same time, I've come to a point where my mental health is crumbling and I'm not sure how much more of this I can take. My parents don't know I'm struggling with these thoughts, but even sharing problems with them would make me feel like a failure or disappointment. I don't really know what it is I think I'll gain from posting this. Maybe I just wanted to vent and hear other people's thoughts. P.S. Never been to therapy, thought of going to one provided by the school, but I've heard they treat students with rude and with little respect. Okay. So, let's talk about this. All right. So this is the case of what seems like a 24-year-old who has been in college for 6 years studying chemistry, feels obligated to stay and finish their degree, really hates their degree, is burnt out, has some of the gifted syndrome kind of stuff going on, right? So A's early on, crappy GPA in college, a shame gap that is based on what they're expecting of themselves and what they're capable of, has a lot of comparison. So what's going on in this person? And why are more and more people at the age of 22 or 24 struggling to finish college and not sure what to do? They feel like trapped between continuing this thing that they've already invested so much in versus kind of giving up. And then if you give up, that's the last nail in the coffin, then you've really given up. And then you haven't really wasted those 6 years, right? Until you give up. So this is the tricky thing about this situation. Let's just talk about that for a second. If you finish, the last 6 of your years of your life haven't been a waste, right? It just took you better late than never. It's not like you wasted 6 years because at least they're counting towards something. It took you a couple other years, but at least you didn't waste it. Whereas giving up, which is what you want to do more than anything else, means that you've wasted those 6 years. So now we really understand why this person is stuck. Because every day they continue, they haven't given up. And if they haven't given up, they haven't wasted 6 years of their life. So they propagate, they stay in this dead career path, this dead major, for the sake of not wasting 6 years of their life. And in doing so, they've wasted 6 years of their life, right? Because now if you're giving up, this person probably had those thoughts even before they picked the major. But they sort of kept plowing forward, because out of avoidance of giving up and wasting all of that time. Because it's all wasted if I give up. And so this is the biggest problem, right? So this is how kids nowadays, I guess this person isn't a kid, end up in what I call an early life crisis. So a lot of times people talk about midlife crises, right? And traditionally people will usually talk about men, and what'll happen is dudes will get their hair colored, sometimes they'll go through a divorce, they'll have an affair, or even if they don't have an affair or go through a divorce, they'll buy some really expensive car that, has a retractable roof. They'll drive around, and this is the midlife crisis, right? So what we're seeing time and time again is what I would call the early life crisis. And there's like a generation of people having an early life crisis. And this is a classic example of this. Like, I picked a major for all the wrong reasons, or I picked a career because I thought it would be safe or good or whatever. I'm just deeply, deeply unhappy in it. I'm burnt out. I can't continue, but I can't stop. Because if I stop, it'll be a waste. And they're stuck. So this is the early life crisis. So why is this happening more than it used to? So what used to happen with a midlife crisis is you got a lot of reassurance that, hey, this is what you need to do. This is it'll get better at the end. It'll get better at the end. It'll get better at the end. And so you're kind of like blind, right? Like you're just kind of like your vision is like focused and forward. You kind of just chugging along. It'll get better. I'll be happy one day. Like once I'm done with school, I'll get a job, then I'll be happy. Once you get the job, once I get promoted, I'll be happy. Because we're just told by everyone that you'll be happy in the future. You'll be happy in the future. You'll be happy in the future. And then you try that for a while, 10 years, 12 years, 15 years. And then you kind of hit this midlife crisis where you're like, this is not the life that I wanted, right? I took all the right steps and I ended up in the wrong place. And then you have this midlife crisis. I'm 40 years old. Like, how can I start over? How do I find joy? What happens? Sometimes you get divorced. Sometimes you start dating a 25-year-old. Like, you know, there are all kinds of things that mark the midlife crisis. So nowadays what we have is the early life crisis. And why is that? I think it's because there's an increased awareness that didn't used to be there. So if we look at the big difference between like 40 years ago and today, there's a dissemination of awareness. I mean, a dissemination of information and an increased awareness of like where things are heading, because people are communicating more now, right? So this person is posting this thing because they've seen other people post similar thoughts. So there's almost like a permission to explore these feelings, to have these feelings. We're all kind of more cosmically aware that like if we put our heads down and plow forward, we're not guaranteed success. That's the promise we were given like 30, 40 years ago. That's the promise of my generation, the millennial generation. The promise we were given is that if you put your head down and you work really hard, you'll be happy. Turned out that that wasn't the case. And so my generation, the millennials, like we all sort of suffered for a while, right? Like we're trying to figure this out. And then like the generation beneath us recognizes they're so much more self-aware than they've ever been. They're so much more aware that like life on autopilot is not going to bring you happiness. So people start to question more. They start to wonder more. They start to like recognize like, oh, I'm burnt out. Like this is becoming more of a thing. And so we have early life crises. So here's my experience as a psychiatrist. Having an early life crisis is way better than having a midlife crisis. So in a weird way, I think this is actually healthy for our society. So when I was struggling, 24 years old, had just graduated from college and couldn't get a job, had applied to medical school, got 40 rejections, you know, couldn't get a job as a research assistant. Like I didn't know what I was doing with my life. Like I wasn't doing anything. So I had to do a lot of hard soul searching. And thankfully I did that soul searching when I was like 24 and then like figured things out by the time I was 28. And then it was fine because I'd sort of figured everything out. And I don't think I'm headed towards a midlife crisis. Right? So I'm almost 40 now, but you know, I'm not, generally speaking, things are going pretty good. So I don't think I'm going to wake up in 3 years and be like, I made a mistake. Where did my life go? I'm pretty happy with how things have gone. And I do think that I would have been very unhappy if I hadn't gone through that process. So this is the thing. If y'all are in an early life crisis, I think there are a couple of really important things to recognize. The first is to recognize that what you're going through is actually quite common. And it's actually really important. That the early life crisis is a voice within you that's actually trying to guide you. You're not wasting your life by giving up on chemistry. You're starting to live your life. So there are a couple of things that are really important to recognize here. One is that this person, you know, we tend to only value things that move towards our final goal. So for me, for example, like I'm not really much of a clinician now, right? I do maybe, I see 5 to 10 hours of patients per week. And like, but it took me years and years of seeing patients to realize that like, it's not actually my favorite thing in the world. And so sometimes I think what we underestimate is like the value of education. So what I mean by education is not what you learn in school, but like spending 6 years of your life to like discover what you truly love or look for what you truly love and realize that, oh, I'm not going to like changing majors is not the solution to finding what I truly love. That's a very, very important discovery because what it means is that no major will satisfy you. So you shouldn't pick your major based on satisfaction. You need to start looking for satisfaction in other ways. Maybe CS will be in the right direction. This is the other thing is because we expect our majors or our careers or our classes to fulfill us. Whereas learning that your major is not going to give you fulfillment is actually a very, very important lesson. Why is that? Because that changes your expectations. Okay, I'm not going to find my passion in college, so I might as well pick something. I know it's going to suck. I'm not expecting it to be anything better than that. You let go of your expectations and you'll start enjoying it. So it's the price of education. It's the price of learning. And you have a midlife crisis, you have an early life crisis. So I think the best thing to do if you're in an early life crisis is kind of listen to yourself. Recognize also that you haven't necessarily wasted time. You just spent time learning what you didn't like, right? So finding your favorite food is not about just eating your favorite food, right? It's about trying lots of different things until you find something that you like. Finding the right person, assuming that you're into monogamy and all that good stuff, like you want to get married, right? So it's sort of it's a value system that I'm assuming there. Like finding the right person to marry involves looking through a lot of wrong people, right? That's just how it works. And so something about the way that we judge ourselves when it comes to life is that the only thing that the benchmark that we set ourselves up against is perfection. 4.0 in high school, 4.0 in college, off to start your own company or go to law school or get an MBA. And then I'm going to go VP of this at this place. Then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to get stock options. Then I'm going to go here and I'm going to start my own company and I'm going to retire at 45. Right? We expect nothing but perfection from ourselves. There's no time in our plan for life for detours or like learning things or figuring things out. Like we just expect ourselves to just think about how absurd this is. We expect 18-year-old kids who have never been in college and have no idea what they want to do with their life to pick a major that sort of commits them to a career path. Like what the hell? How on earth are you supposed to get an 18-year-old to commit to a career path? They've never done anything. But this is the way that society exists. They ask you to make commitments, and then you get into the sunk cost fallacy, right? Where it's like throwing good money after bad. Well, I did chemistry because it's the best score that I had, so I might as well do something I'm good at. And then you are doing chemistry for 1 year, and you're like, well, it's not like I like anything else, so let me continue chemistry. You do chemistry for 2 years. Well, I'm not really liking this so much. Let me try kinesiology. Let me try physiology. It's not like I like any of those things. I guess I'll stick with chemistry. Year 4. I don't actually like chemistry, so I'm going to drop half these classes. I can't motivate myself year 5, year 6. And it's like, what else am I going to do? I don't know. So I might as well just keep doing this. So it's terrifying, like the situations that we put people in. And so now what's happening is there's a raised awareness of this. People are realizing like, oh, other people are unhappy too. It's actually okay to be unhappy. So then they post things like this, and then you have an early life crisis. What do I want to do with my life? That's what our entire audience is. It's like a group of people having an early life crisis. And like, because, we have more than 5 viewers, it seems like it's a societal problem, which is totally okay. So I had an early life crisis. I thought it was fantastic. I think it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I would be so miserable if I got into medical school right away, because then I would have like become a cardiologist or a surgeon or something like that, because it was all about ego. I would have been embarrassed to become a psychiatrist, even though it's what I love. I'd have been like, that's not a real doctor. Like, people aren't going to like be like, oh, psychiatrist is not a real doctor. Like all that stupid ego stuff would have dictated my life. And I would have been miserable. I'd have been rich and miserable. Instead, I'm streaming on Twitch and wearing a hoodie. And this is my work for the day. Right? And so I know it's terrifying, but like, take the time that you need to figure out the things that you need to figure out. Very practically, if you have to have conversations with your parents, you have conversations with your parents. And like what you tell your parents is, look, I've tried my level best to make this work. I'm just incredibly unhappy. And, I don't really think that like this is going to work for me. It's going to be tough, And like, I'm trying to figure out how to honor your sacrifice. I'm trying to figure out how to do something that I can repay everything that you've done for me with, but I just don't think it's chemistry. And I need some time to try to figure that out, and I'd like to like explore what to do with my life. I tried living on autopilot for far too long, and it's just not working. And this is the key thing that you really have to understand. So for all these people who are in early life crises, here's the key thing to remember. It's the avoidance of the conflict that keeps you paralyzed and stuck on autopilot, right? So in this person, it's like coming to terms with like dropping out of college kept you major in chemistry. Coming to terms with disappointing your parents is too hard. So you're not going to say anything to them because even telling them, you're going to feel like a failure. So it's the avoidance of that conflict which keeps you in autopilot because you're like sticking your head in the sand and you're like, this is not working anymore. But I can't change it. I can't disappoint people. I can't quit. I can't do any of those things, even though every fiber of my being is telling me to do those things. And so internally, you're tortured. You're stuck. You're being pulled in two different directions. You're being torn apart because you want to avoid the negative consequence. You want to avoid the conflict. You're scared of what your parents will say or think. So instead of actually fixing the problem, all you do is pretend that everything is okay. So your parents don't realize, we can't let them know that you're not really enjoying yourself. They may put two and two together because first of all, they're your parents. And secondly, you've been in undergrad for 6 years. So they may know something is up. But let's not worry about that right now. Right? It's recognizing that internally you're not willing to like grieve or give up or mourn the price of what you've done. So you say stay stuck. And then year 7 goes by, year 8 goes by, year 9 goes by. And if you do that for a while, then you end up with a midlife crisis. That's what all the people with midlife crises were doing. They would just keep plowing forward to avoid conflict and don't accept what's actually wrong in your life. Don't try to do anything about it. Just pretend that everything is okay. It's like the band continuing to play when the Titanic is sinking. Just pretend the problem doesn't exist. I'm not listening. La, 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 la. Right? So it's really challenging to confront your fears. So now we're going to give you a Jnana Yoga practice for that. You guys may think that, oh, path of knowledge, that's great. I don't actually have to sit down and meditate. Like I can just think my way to enlightenment. Absolutely, my friend. The path of knowledge is for you. So you guys ready for your path of knowledge practice for if you have an early life crisis and you're avoiding conflict and don't want to admit to yourself that your life is empty and on autopilot? Here it is. The next time you go out to eat, when a waiter asks you, how is your food? Complain. That is the practice. Say, hey, if there's anything wrong with your food, don't just like complain just because. If there's anything you don't like about your food, it needs a little bit more salt, needs a little bit more sauce, has too much sauce, just complain. Just be like, it's not the best, to be honest. If you don't think, if you'd give it like a 7 out of 10, tell them, I'd give it a 7 out of 10. I think it needs to do this, this, and this. Do it politely. Don't be an asshole. Don't be a Karen. Just be honest. Just tell them, honestly, I'm a little bit disappointed. It's kind of undercooked in the middle. Tell them, right? Be respectful, be kind, be compassionate, but be honest. And then that's where it's kind of like, yeah, don't lie. I'm not telling you guys to lie. I'm just saying if there's some problem with your food, just tell your waiter or waitress. Right? No, it's not being a douchebag. So if you're disrespectful about it, that's being a douchebag. If you blame the waiter and be like, oh, blah, 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 throw a temper tantrum. If you're like, no, if they ask you, how's your food? Just answer the question that they asked you. Right? That's all I'm saying you should do. And if you like it, then you can say that too. Just tell them honestly what you think about the food. And now notice within yourself what happens when you start to do that. Because what is this a practice of? Why is this Jnana Yoga? Why is this a meditation practice? Is Dr. K just trying to make you feel uncomfortable? Well, yeah, that's a little bit of that. But what it really is recognizing when I feel something on the inside and I hold it in for the sake of ruffling other people's feathers. That's how you get into an early life crisis like this. Because you're so conflict avoidant that you can't even own something as simple as my sandwich has too much tomato. Like that's all. And so practice. This is what Jnana Yoga is. What happens within you, and then pay attention. What makes it hard to do? What makes it easy to do? How is it received by other people? Can you vocalize what you truly feel internally, even if it sets someone up to feel a little bit bad? Because here's the really cool thing. So if you guys are afraid of making people feel bad, if you get something and it's not what if you really want to be nasty about it, if you want to be like Slytherin style, then you can like, when you order something and then tell them you ordered something else. And like, that's lying though. But, I don't think you should do something like that. Because here's the cool thing is like oftentimes chefs and waiters will like want to fix it for you, right? And so you let them fix it for you, then you can give them honest feedback. You can be like, hey, this is so much better. I really appreciate it. Oh yeah, just like that side of sauce really fixed things. Can I get some ketchup? Oh, the ketchup actually fixes it. Thank you so much. Right? You can be a good person. I'm not saying don't be a good person. You don't have to be an evil person, but be honest. This is Jnana Yoga. To be honest with the people around you, be authentic with yourself, and do so in a compassionate way. And if you are it's so hard for you to do that, because then that's why we pick it, right? Jnana Yoga is like, it's not as easy as just sitting there and breathing. So Jnana Yoga is actually regarded as the hardest path to enlightenment. And so there are a bunch of people out there like you thinking, oh, I have such high IQ, I can do path of knowledge, easy peasy. No. It's the path of contemplation. It's not the path of information. Jnana Yoga is not gained just by reading books. It's gained by the application of what you read into like experiments on the self. So give it a shot. There's your Jnana Yoga practice, okay?